Diaz stands in an endless prairie of grass, a stark change from the capital city he left a month ago. His carriage driver drops him off, muttering that this desolate wasteland fits an upstart orphan, and hands him a territory map and imperial inventory before announcing his new official title, Diaz Nezros. Left alone, Diaz looks over his new home. The king granted him this land for his exploits during the Long War, and though Diaz knows little about nobility, he understands a lord must protect his subjects and collect taxes. Finding a clean stream, he feels a wave of gratitude, remembering the muddy water of the battlefield. He walks a great distance without seeing a single person or tree. When night falls, Diaz sits in the dark and contemplates his bleak future. He decides to give the plains 2 more days. If things remain hopeless, he will leave before he starves and find a village where he can be useful and honor his parents' final wishes. The next morning, a sharp voice breaks the silence. A young girl named Alna stands over him, shouting for him to wake up and demanding to know what he is doing out here. Diaz introduces himself and explains he was just sleeping on the ground because he has nowhere else to go. Alna remains suspicious and demands to know his ultimate purpose. Diaz explains he was ordered to live here and just wants to survive. When she demands a serious answer, Diaz speaks from the heart, stating he wants to fulfill his parents' wishes by protecting the weak and being useful. Alna looks confused and asks why he is not lying. Diaz shrugs, saying he has no reason to. Alna steps closer, demanding to know if he is an ally or an enemy. Realizing this prairie is his domain and this girl must be one of his subjects, Diaz confidently declares he is her ally and promises to protect her from any foe. The moment he speaks, the horn on Alna's head shines with a brilliant light. Shocked by the strength of his aura, Alna grabs his hand and tells him to follow her across the plains. They run until a hidden village suddenly appears. Diaz is amazed he missed an entire settlement the day before. Alna drags him to the center of the village to meet the chieftain, an elder named Mal. Mal notes it is unusual for Alna to bring an outsider, asking if her horn detected a red aura. Alna explains there was no red, but rather an intense blue light when he claimed to be an ally. Mal asks the stranger for his name. Diaz introduces himself, and Mal asks if Diaz will be an ally to him as well. Diaz agrees, explaining he considers everyone here his subjects because the king sent him to be the lord of these lands. The mention of the king infuriates Alna, but Mal calms her down and asks Diaz to explain exactly how he received this order. Diaz accommodates the chieftain's request and shares his life story. He explains that during his childhood, his mother always told him to do work that other people found useful, while his father instructed him to become a man who protects the weak. He then narrates that when he was 10 years old, both of his parents died in a terrible epidemic. When he was 15, a war broke out and enemy troops quickly reached the neighboring town. To protect his friends, he volunteered to become a soldier. He consistently distinguished himself in battle across 20 long years of warfare until the conflict finally ended and the king granted him this grassland domain for his service. Mal is convinced Diaz genuinely wants to protect people, but asks if he would still be an ally if they turned out not to be his subjects. Diaz answers without hesitation, stating they would still be neighbors on the same prairie, so he would gladly help them. Mal smiles and reveals the truth. They are not his subjects, but historical enemies of the kingdom. 50 years ago, the Anakin tribe lost a battle and fled to these lands. Mal explains they store magical energy in their horns to cast concealment magic, hiding the entire village from outside eyes. Mal notes he only shared this secret because Diaz's aura was pure blue. Mal explains that the Anakin possess a unique spell called Soul Appraisal, which reveals a person's inner intent through the changing color of their horn. A red glow indicates imminent danger or deep malice hidden within a person's heart. Conversely, a white light represents a harmless nature that is free of any hostile intent. Finally, he notes that a brilliant blue aura signifies a pure soul who will bring immense joy or great blessings to everyone they encounter. Mal admits he has never met a fool so honest that he still lives strictly by his parents' dying wishes. He offers to provide food, shelter, and livestock to help Diaz survive. In return, he demands Diaz keep the village a secret from the king. Diaz agrees, having no personal problem with the Anakin. To cement the arrangement, Mal assigns Alna to work as Diaz's personal caretaker. Both Alna and Diaz object in shock, but Mal firmly tells Alna that the stranger is her responsibility. The village men quickly construct a traditional nomadic house for Diaz. Alna explains that the tribe lives in these portable structures, called yurts, so they can quickly dismantle them and flee danger. Alna promises the tribe will deliver food and a pair of livestock called bars, which will provide a steady income if bred properly. When Diaz asks how to gather human subjects, Alna snaps that he only has one yurt and minimal food, meaning new people would simply starve. Calling him a loony lord, she hands him a pouch of matani dust, explaining its scent attracts wild beasts. If he hunts them, he can trade the meat and hides back to the village for more yurts. Diaz grows excited, boasting that he is an excellent hunter. He travels a safe distance from the village and dumps the entire pouch of dust onto the grass. Within moments, a massive herd of buffalo-like beasts charges over the horizon. Relying on his combat instincts and brute strength, Diaz charges into the fray with his massive battle axe. He slaughters a staggering number of beasts while the rest scatter. However, looking at the pile of carcasses, Diaz realizes he cannot carry 40 large animals back alone. He drags just one beast back to camp, dreading Alna's judgmental glare. To his surprise, Alna is filled with joy upon seeing the carcass, praising him for bringing down a black ghee on his first hunt. When Diaz clarifies that he killed about half the herd but could not carry them all, a stunned Alna is completely amazed, and her opinion of him changes for the better. Mal walks over and praises Diaz for demonstrating his true manliness. An ecstatic Alna agrees, calling his strength incredible before rushing off to gather the village men to harvest the remaining carcasses. Left alone with the chieftain, Diaz asks what the Anakin mean by manliness. Mal explains it represents a man's value as a reliable provider and hard worker. Diaz remarks that back in the kingdom, women care about looks and charming conversation. Mal scoffs, asking if handsome features can fill an empty belly, noting that anything outside of true utility holds zero value to an Anakin woman. Mal adds that Alna is a great beauty and hard worker, meaning her expected wedding gift would normally be exceptionally high. Diaz frantically waves his hands, stammering that marriage is against his intentions. Mal tells him not to worry, casually mentioning that Anakin and humans can successfully have children together. The following morning, Alna serves Diaz breakfast and eagerly asks what he plans to hunt today. Diaz asks if yesterday's haul is not enough, but Alna explains that to attract new subjects, he will need to build a water well and a privy. To get the village craftsmen to build them, he needs a wider variety of trade goods. She suggests hunting a dangerous monster, noting that while the meat is contaminated with miasma, their claws, horns, and core magic stones fetch a premium price. Alna offers to use her tracking magic so they can hunt together. Diaz immediately refuses to put her in danger, telling her to stay behind, but Alna insists it will be more fun as a duo, and Diaz reluctantly agrees. Before heading out, Diaz grooms his two bars, naming them Francis and Francoise. Suddenly, Alna emerges from the yurt wearing striking makeup that enhances her features. A flustered Diaz stammers that they should get moving. As they trek through the wilderness, Alna casts a detection spell and announces she has located a large monster nearby. Diaz tells her to stay back, but Alna reminds him she can cast concealment magic if things go wrong, so they move forward together. They crest a hill and spot a heavily armored creature. Diaz asks if it is just a giant turtle, but Alna gasps in terror, correcting him that it is a legendary earth dragon. Completely unfazed, Diaz charges forward and slams his battle axe down, but the weapon bounces right off the tough hide. The dragon shields its weak spots, and Alna screams for him to run. Diaz refuses, declaring his style is to strike repeatedly when a single blow fails. As he strikes, his weapon chips, but he steps back and casts a mending spell, instantly repairing the metal. From the sidelines, Alna begins to tremble as the intense miasma radiates from the dragon, eating away her energy. Diaz notices her shivering and decides to finish the fight quickly. Channeling every ounce of his strength, he delivers a desperate swing that shatters the dragon's rocky defenses. The enraged beast opens its jaws and spits torrents of fire. Diaz ducks under the flames, but the dragon shifts its gaze and aims its next blast directly at the weakened Alna. Remembering his oath to protect her, Diaz lunges forward with unmatched speed, swinging his axe with fury to deliver a lethal blow that cleaves through the monster. As the corpse collapses, Diaz rushes to check on Alna. She throws her arms around him, squeezing him tightly. Overcome with admiration for him, she declares right then and there that she is going to marry him. Following the sudden declaration of marriage on the battlefield, the story shifts back to the village as the community gathers to process the spoils of a legendary hunt. The village men transport the massive corpse into the settlement, cheering that Diaz slew an earth dragon single-handedly. Diaz reflects on the exhausting ordeal, noting that moving the giant beast kept them busy until morning. Looking at the cheering crowd, he wonders why everyone is so excited. Mal approaches, admitting it's hard to believe Dias defeated such a legendary monster alone. Dias proposes a trade to the chieftain, a well and a privy in exchange for resources from the dragon. When he asks if the carcass will cover the cost, Mal laughs, explaining that just a single leg would pay for a whole slew of wells and privies. A surprised Dias asks if the monster is truly that valuable. Mal confirms the dragon is worth far more than the village can accommodate, meaning they will return the vast majority of the materials. The chieftain counters with a generous offer, detailing that the village will provide full butchering services for the giant beast. He promises to handle the construction of a personal water well and a privy, along with supplying high-quality yurt-building materials and steady food provisions. To complete the trade, Mal includes a regular supply of medicinal herbs and an entirely separate yurt for Dias to use specifically as a storehouse. Dias smiles warmly, deeply appreciating their support. Mal also advises Dias to set aside a small portion of the remaining materials for Alna's formal wedding gift, noting her parents would be overjoyed to receive a single claw or fang. Dias panics, asking what this marriage talk is about. Mal firmly explains that Dias is getting married whether he likes it or not. The village wants close ties with their powerful neighbor. He adds that if Dias refuses Alna, every woman in the village will start calling on him. Dias admits that would be a problem. Mal tells him not to worry, as Alna is already discussing the details with her parents. Hoping for a compromise, Dias asks if they can just say they are engaged. Mal explains that the Anakin tribe doesn't practice engagements, people simply marry, though Dias can decide the ceremony's timing. Mal adds that closer ties will help the village guide Dias into becoming a superb lord. When Dias asks why they care so much, Mal explains that if he fails, a terrible ruler might replace him, recalling how the previous good-for-nothing lord recently died of an illness. Walking through the village, Dias overhears locals gossiping about how well Alna has done for her age. Curious, he asks how old she is. The villagers happily reveal she just turned 15. Dias stands speechless and horrified, realizing that at 35, he is old enough to be her father. Knowing kingdom law requires a minimum age of 18 to marry, Dias calculates that a 3-year engagement will buy him time to become a full-fledged lord. Suddenly, Alna runs up, excitedly announcing that everything is arranged with her family before sweetly asking what he wants for breakfast. Dias smiles and says he'll eat anything she makes. Despite his plans, the village completely ignores the concept of an engagement, and the formal wedding is carried out that very night. Villagers gather around the bride, praising her beauty and envying Dias's luck. Dias desperately protests to the crowd that they are merely engaged, but the laughing villagers simply tell the dragon slayer not to be shy. Sometime after the wedding banquet, the new well and privy are completed, and a peaceful routine begins. While working on a new structure, Dias reflects that his first building attempt isn't bad, but notes he must improve his crafting skills so future subjects won't have to sleep outdoors. Alna suddenly runs up, warning that her life detection spell spotted a lone monster approaching from the north. Determined to protect their new assets, Dias declares he will take it down. Alna insists on joining him, arguing they should face threats together. In the fields, Dias identifies the target as an ogre. Alna notes that an ogre's materials smell too foul to have any practical use, meaning they will gain nothing from the hunt. Still, they must stop it. Coordinating perfectly, Alna unleashes her magic to restrict the beast, and Dias slays it with a single swing. Alna praises the victory, reminding him it's better to fight together as husband and wife. Dias tries to correct her, but Alna cuts him off, complaining about the terrible stench of the ogre blood. She orders him to wash up immediately, banning him from the yurt until the smell is gone. By the time Dias finishes scrubbing in the stream, evening has fallen, and he sighs at how difficult it is to remove the odor. The next morning, Alna rushes out of the yurt, joyfully announcing that they are pregnant at last. A stunned Dias cheers and rushes over to pamper their livestock, praising Françoise and Francis. However, Alna turns serious, explaining the situation isn't entirely good news. She reminds him that bars are highly intelligent, making them incredibly susceptible to fatal stress during pregnancy. To reassure them, the strongest member of the herd, Dias, must stay constantly nearby. She warns that Francis and Françoise will have to live directly inside the yurt with them, meaning things will get messy, smelly, and testing for their relationship. Dias smiles warmly, assuring her that the mess doesn't bother him. To him, the bars are family, and a little smell is nothing compared to a safe birth. Overjoyed, Alna praises his kindness, proudly declaring him her true husband. Suddenly, Alna's horn glows green, signaling a group of 10 humans and horses approaching from the east. Recognizing that the royal capital lies in that direction, Dias instructs Alna to hide inside with the bars while he goes to investigate. Dias scouts the group, counting 3 cavaliers and 4 infantrymen. As he draws close, a soldier named Klaus happily calls out to him. Dias recognizes his old war buddy, who is thrilled to see a comrade moving up in the world. When Dias asks what brings him to the frontier, Klaus explains he is escorting a noble lady and asks to rest at Dias's manor after their grueling journey. Leading them back, Dias is glad he kept the Anakin tribe a secret to avoid unnecessary complications with the kingdom. Inside his lone tent, the noble lady introduces herself as Diane, the 3rd princess of the kingdom. Dias listens as Diane looks around and asks where his grand manor and servants are. He corrects her, explaining this self-built yurt is all he owns. Diane is shocked, believing her father had granted him massive starting capital. Dias clarifies the grim reality. The kingdom dumped him in the plains without a single copper or any food and water. When he asks her true purpose, Diane reveals that cries for a new war are rising in the capital. She requests his military assistance as a legendary hero, offering her hand in marriage as an incentive. Dias firmly refuses. He has no intention of abandoning his pregnant livestock, views marrying a stranger as no reward, and has no subjects to form an army. Infuriated by the blunt rejection, a royal soldier draws his weapon and lunges at Dias. Dias effortlessly parries the strike, shattering the steel sword with ease, and sternly orders the party to leave immediately. Klaus steps in to defuse the tension, warning the princess and guards that they stand no chance against the kingdom's savior. As the royal party retreats, Diane furiously shouts that Dias will regret turning her away. Meanwhile, Dias groans at his damaged floor matting, dreading Alna's reaction to the mess. Once the party rides off, Alna drops her concealment magic. She reveals that the noblewoman emitted a hostile red aura, while Klaus shone a trustworthy blue. After Dias apologizes to the bars for leaving their side, Alna points directly to the ruined floor matting, prompting a guilty apology from her husband. The next morning, Alna detects a lone human wandering aimlessly from the east. She accompanies Dias under a concealment spell to keep the bars calm. They find Klaus, who is lost, weaponless, and stripped of his military armor. Klaus explains he got himself dismissed from service to avoid being sent to the front lines of the upcoming war. Looking at Dias with deep respect, he asks to be hired as his personal soldier. Dias recalls Klaus's loyalty and reliability on the battlefield, realizing how reassuring it would be to have him around. Before he can answer, Alna reveals herself, approving of Klaus due to his pure blue aura. Klaus panics at the sudden appearance of the woman and the strange sheep. Dias cracks a smile, noting it is going to be a very long story, and invites his very first official subject back to camp. Following his arrival, 10 days pass as Klaus settles comfortably into his new life on the frontier. He reflects on how fortunate he is to have made the journey, deeply grateful for the personal yurt Dias helped him build. Equipping a spear and armor crafted from dragon materials bestowed by his liege, Klaus recognizes that such gifts are beyond what even royalty could obtain and vows to honor the immense trust placed in him. At noon, Alna prepares a meal of herb-roasted black ghee. Dias enthusiastically assures Klaus that he is in for a treat, and upon taking his first bite, Klaus praises the dish immensely. He remarks that Alna will make a fine wife and asks Dias if he agrees, prompting Alna to offer Klaus a second helping. Gratefully accepting, Klaus invites Dias to join him. But when Dias admits that being addressed as Lord still feels unnatural, Klaus insists on using the formal title to make their respective positions clear. Dias silently reflects that while Klaus currently makes up his entire military force, his sheer enthusiasm more than compensates for the lack of numbers. Suddenly, the horn on Alna's head glows with light, signaling an incoming presence. Dias asks if something approaches, and Alna reports 12 humans heading toward them from the east. Shortly after, Dias senses that one of the travelers is severely weakened and on the brink of death. Deciding to investigate before it is too late, Dias instructs Klaus to hold down the fort. He explains that if the situation appears dangerous, he will send Alna and the bars back, at which point Klaus must protect everyone. Klaus pledges his complete reliability, which Dias warmly acknowledges before departing. As he waits, Klaus considers the ongoing conflict in the east, where the royal capital is consumed by a succession dispute among 5 princes and princesses. He ponders how Princess Diane lacks military power compared to her siblings, explaining why she attempted to recruit Dias, while the greedy second prince likely confiscated Dias's rightful reward. Realizing that the political infighting of nobility reaches even the frontier, Klaus reflects that the conflict may eventually arrive here, though he feels fighting and dying in Dias's service would be a worthy fate. His thoughts are cut short as Dias returns with the newcomers. Alna warmly receives the exhausted refugees, serving them an herbal infusion to ease their fatigue. That evening, Klaus and Dias discuss the situation. Dias explains that a rebellion in a neighboring domain caused an impoverished village to banish its elderly women to save food. Klaus identifies the location as Kazdek's domain, recalling its dire conditions when he passed through. Dias expresses deep admiration for the women, noting that their leader, Grandma Maya, used her fortune-telling skills to guide them to safety. Dias excitedly celebrates gaining 12 new subjects all at once, declaring his intention to build more yurts. When Klaus hesitantly points out that refugees over 70 years old will contribute very little, Dias counters that their age is amazing and hopes to learn the secrets of a long life from them. Alna agrees with Dias's decision as the Lord, leaving Klaus to watch as Dias eagerly rushes off to start construction. Klaus reflects on how Dias has always remained true to his noble nature. He recalls a past battle where their commander ordered a retreat, abandoning civilians in an emergency shelter. Facing oncoming enemy forces alone, Klaus feared his end had come, only for Dias to appear after rescuing a crying child. Dias entrusted the child to refugees and fought alongside Klaus to rout the enemy army. Realizing Dias has not changed at all, Klaus chastises himself for thinking it was noble to die in battle, deciding instead to live and support Dias in becoming a great lord. Sometime later, the elderly women gather with Dias inside a newly constructed meeting space, promising to spin yarn and weave cloth from the bar's wool. Noticing Dias's serious expression, Maya asks what troubles him. Dias explains that with a growing population, he wishes to officially declare a village but struggles to find a suitable name. Maya suggests naming it Dias Village, which Dias rejects, while Klaus proposes Dragonslayer Village, which Alna quickly dismisses. Alna suggests Iluk Village, explaining it means first village in the ancient tongue. Pleased with the meaningful name, Dias officially establishes Iluk Village and concludes the meeting. As they step outside, Alna notes that with a village established, they must now seek more subjects. Maya approaches, sensing Dias's internal conflict regarding her previous suggestion to sell dragon materials to purchase slaves. Dias firmly voices his hatred of slavery, recalling the terrible treatment of enslaved soldiers he witnessed during the war and declaring a total ban on slavery within his domain. Maya smiles, revealing she was merely testing his character and intended to stop him if he agreed. She explains that Kazdek's domain is plagued by cruelty, as the local lord and his eldest son hunt slaves for sport, while the second son keeps numerous female slaves. Dias vows that Iluk Village will never permit such tragedy. To help supply the village, Alna contacts a traveling frogkin merchant who periodically visits the Anakin. When the merchant, named Peijin Do, arrives, he boisterously greets the famed dragon slayer. Dias presents a large, meter-wide piece of earth dragon material for trade. Skeptical that Dias killed the beast alone, Peijin questions his story. In response, Dias draws his axe and effortlessly cleaves the dragon shell in half, prompting Klaus to excitedly name the technique the Dragon Shell Crusher. Thoroughly convinced, Peijin eagerly agrees to trade and orders his crew to unload their goods. Desperate to clear unsold inventory, Peijin presents two young, lifeless-eyed orphan girls, explaining he failed to sell them in the Beastkin Nation. Fearing Peijin is trafficking slave orphans, Dias grows angry, but Alna and Maya calm him down. Peijin frantically explains that the twin girls are not slaves. Their birth village viewed them as omens of calamity and tried to execute them. Their parents fled into the wild, fell terminally ill, and entrusted the children to Peijin with their remaining money to sell them as merchandise. With the funds exhausted, Peijin pleads that he is simply trying to cover his expenses. Alna uses her magic to confirm the merchant is telling the truth, and that the twins possess strong blue auras. Dias agrees to take custody of the twins, paying Peijin extra dragon materials to cover the cost of their care. Delighted, the merchant departs. Gently lifting the malnourished 3-year-old girls, Dias tries to comfort them by offering food and games, asking for their names. When they refuse to accept new names, Dias patiently listens as they reveal their names are Sinai and Ihan. Dias thanks them warmly and asks them to take a bath with Alna and change into clean clothes. As Alna leads them away and Maya promises to prepare food, Klaus expresses surprise at Dias's natural way with children. Dias reflects on how he acted as a father figure to fellow orphans before the war, hoping his old companions are safe. Shortly after, the twins return cleanly dressed. Dias compliments their appearance, noting he does not expect them to open up immediately. Maya observes that while the twins are not human, their presence will bring good fortune to the domain. Alna presents each girl with an ahi jewel collar, explaining that in the ancient tongue, Senai means one who is beautiful like the moon, and Aihan means the holy moon. Recognizing the deep love their late parents held for them through these names, the twins break down in tears. Dias gently comforts them, telling them they no longer need to hold back their pain and are free to cry. Dias asks Alna about the ancient tongue, and she explains it is a legendary language, suggesting the twins' ancestors may have interacted with the Anakin long ago. 10 days pass as Iluk village becomes increasingly lively with the twins' arrival. One afternoon, the twins squabble over a stolen potato. When Dias offers his own half-eaten potato, one of the girls stubbornly rejects it. Interrupting their argument, Alna announces that she detects a lone rider approaching on horseback from the east. As Dias prepares to investigate, the twins warmly ask him to return home soon, which he promises to do. Stepping outside, Dias meets the rider while Alna hides herself with magic, confirming the traveler harbors no hostility. The rider introduces himself as Kamalats, a servant of Eldon Kazdex, the new lord of Kazdek's domain following a successful rebellion. Kamalats explains that Lord Eldon is currently traveling to seek an audience with Dias and asks to be received at Dias's manor. Recalling that Eldon is the second son who surrounds himself with enslaved women, Dias firmly refuses, declaring he will meet the new lord right here in the open field. Though startled, Kamalats accepts the demand, while Dias silently vows to keep such a cruel man far away from the peaceful village. As Kamalats rides off to summon his master, the grand carriage of Lord Eldon Kazdex pulls up to the meeting site, accompanied by a large entourage. Alna observes that the broad, barrel-bellied man possesses a strong blue aura, not quite as intense as Dias's, but remarkably clear. She adds that none of his companions show any red hostile intent. Eldon steps down from his chariot, bowing and apologizing profusely for his eager arrival. He explains that he has admired Dias, the legendary savior of the kingdom, since childhood and wanted to meet him in person. He promises he holds no ill intent and hopes Dias is not upset. Dias accepts the apology gracefully, also offering regrets for treating Kamalats harshly. Eldon quickly dismisses the formality and notices the young woman standing near Dias. He boasts of his keen hearing and scent, noting she shares the same kind aura as Dias despite her concealment magic. Dias realizes concealment magic is ineffective against Eldon's sharp senses. Noticing Alna's horn, Eldon asks about her heritage and relationship to Dias. Dias begins to explain she is his fiancée, but Alna firmly interrupts, declaring she is his wife. Eldon asks if her horn makes her a demi-human, but Alna explains she is an Anakin and asks what the term means. Eldon defines demi-humans as non-human species like beastkin or fishkin, and Alna agrees the term fits her. Eldon bursts into tears of joy, asking if Dias has children with Alna. Dias frantically tells him to compose himself, clarifying that they have no children yet. Alna adds that she plans to bear 10 children and mentions Dias is currently raising 2 demi-human orphans. Overcome with emotion upon hearing Dias has a demi-human wife and children, Eldon transforms into a massive elephant right before their eyes, crying out to his mother that he found a true comrade in Dias. Dias stares in utter shock as Eldon faints from the sudden transformation, panicking over his condition. They move the unconscious Eldon inside his luxurious chariot to rest. Eldon grants his servant permission to explain his unique situation. The servant reveals that Eldon is a half-demi-human born to a human father and an elephant-kin mother. While his ability to shift forms offers strategic advantages, the physical toll is exhausting, requiring the constant care of his wives. Eldon apologizes for losing control out of pure excitement. Dias inquires about the rebellion in Kazdex, and Eldon explains it was necessary to protect those dear to him. His servant recounts how the previous lord, Enkars, favored Eldon over his cruel human eldest son, giving Eldon status and authority. However, at age 5, Eldon discovered his true heritage and his enslaved mother. From then on, Eldon secretly worked to protect demi-humans while hiding his true nature from Enkars. Eldon proudly states his ultimate dream is to build a world where humans and demi-humans live in peace together. The servant clears up the rumors about Eldon's harem, explaining his wives were all former slaves he rescued, and they willingly serve as his caretakers out of love and shared ideals. The rumor of his cruel behavior was merely a cover story. However, when Enkars discovered Eldon's true intentions, he threatened to execute every demi-human in the domain, forcing Eldon to raise an army, defeat his father, and liberate his people. Dias confirms Eldon's noble motives. Eldon admits that hearing tales of Sir Dias, the kingdom's heroic savior, convinced him that Dias was a kindred spirit. Dias asks if he is truly the hero being described. Eldon and his servant detail the dramatic stories circulating across the realm, how Dias rescues the weak, cuts down thousands of foes, reforms tyrannical nobles with his fists, and even inspired a famous stage play in the capital before the nobility suppressed it. Dias internally realizes most of these stories are wild exaggerations, though Eldon insists Dias's true presence exceeds even the grandest tales. Alna proudly boasts that her husband is indeed extraordinary. Dias pledges his support for Eldon's dream, sharing that Iluk village already practices peaceful coexistence between humans and demi-humans, and invites Eldon to be his friend. As they discuss domain management, Dias asks for advice on recruiting more subjects. Eldon promises to make a proclamation in Kazdex, but strongly warns Dias that his immediate priority must be securing large food stores through agricultural production before winter arrives. Dias thanks him for the valuable counsel, and Eldon takes his leave on excellent terms. Dias and Alna return to their yurt near dusk, where Sinai and Ihan throw a furious tantrum, accusing Dias of lying about coming right back. Dias apologizes. Later that night, Alna reports that the twins finally fell asleep after kicking and hitting Dias, and she asks whether he should have disciplined them. Dias explains that since he broke a promise, apologizing first was necessary. He notes that newly adopted orphans often act out to test boundaries, though he intends to guide them firmly if the behavior continues. Dias prepares to begin cultivating fields, but Alna's horn suddenly glows, detecting a group of late-night intruders approaching from a different direction than Eldon's departure route. Suspecting bandits, Dias prepares to investigate alone, but Alna insists on accompanying him. She explains that on a pitch-black new moon night, he needs her magic to navigate, leaving Klaus to guard the village. In the dark fields, a mercenary band carrying torches marches toward the territory. A disgruntled noble client complains about the darkness and expense, but the mercenary leader explains that attacking Dias in broad daylight would be suicidal. The noble promises a bounty of 100 silver coins for Eldon and 10 gold coins for killing Dias. Suddenly, an arrow strikes one of the mercenaries. The leader orders his men to douse their torches and fire blindly into the dark. Moving undetected through the blackness, Dias single-handedly thrashes the mercenaries one by one. The leader panics as 4 men drop in seconds. Dias steps into view in his heavy steel armor, wielding his two-handed axe with glowing blue eyes, effortlessly knocking out the leader. The terrified leader realizes no amount of gold is worth fighting such a monster. Far away from the battle, the hiring noble flees in a panic, cursing his useless hirelings. Clutching a painful old groin injury, he fumes with intense hatred for Dias, a commoner orphan who dared to strike down a noble's authority and permanently maim him in a past encounter. He vows unrelenting revenge against Dias. Dias gathers the conscious mercenaries and lectures them on the foolishness of banditry. The leader meekly clarifies they are mercenaries, but Dias pronounces his sentence, exile from the domain. Alna asks if the punishment is too lenient, but Dias explains that mercy is appropriate since no villagers were harmed, though he will show no leniency if they return. Alna points out that the confiscated steel weapons can be melted into useful tools. She reflects on her past, recalling how she once dreamed of hunting bandits for profit and remembering the day she first met Dias sleeping near his carriage. She admits she initially considered killing him for his gear, but felt compelled to speak to him instead. Overcome with love, Alna suddenly kisses Dias on the cheek and flees into the night, blushing furiously. Dias smiles and gives chase, reflecting that he can only walk forward with her light guiding his path through the dark.